So kobolds, right? Mean, territorial, and pretty crafty. They were created and enslaved by dragons, and today these guys mostly nest in mines and under cities where they invent elaborate defenses to protect their homes. Usually seen as an annoyance, but they can also be a boon to both player characters and cities alike. These guys often end up drawing the short straw when it comes to fitting into society, but they do find their own way to fit in, one way or another.
Hey folks, welcome to Pixel Spiel. This here's Matcha, and I'm Oolong. Together we decided we wanted to start making videos about the lore from our favorite games and other media. We hope you enjoy coming along for the ride. Anyways, back to Kobolds.
You know, at the start of the video, I call them mean, but that's really a generalization. Kobolds are seen as having a bit of a Napoleon complex, which, given the size of the Dragonborn, half-dragons, wyverns, dragon turtles, the actual dragons, you can't really blame them. What makes the situation worse is the general lack of power that they have in comparison to the other races in the worlds of D&D, and especially by their relationship to the gnomes. Garl Glittergold is one of the major gods of the gnomes, and in an attempt to erase the kobolds from existence, he collapsed the mine on top of the first kobold, Krodelmak. Krodelmak was raised to godhood after this incident, but kobolds have maintained a grudge ever since. Now, I feel like it's important to say that it's not as if Garl Glittergold did this just for shits and giggles. In the early days of the kobolds' existence, a large part of the work they did for the chromatic dragons was mining the soul gems of gnomes and enslaving the ones that already existed. The gnomes have largely moved on from this dark part of their shared history, but again, many kobold dens still hold a grudge. All that said, some kobolds do still choose to live in cities or in concert with them. In fact, the magic shop in the city my party is currently staying in is run by a paranoid kobold named Vod. He's a Scrooge McDuck, and I love him. In the same campaign, the larger kobold den works in the mines outside of the city. Things still aren't great for them, but it's a more nuanced look at how kobolds interact with the world. They aren't sad, pathetic, or antagonistic. They're resilient, cunning, and hardworking. It's an interesting side to see of kobolds that you don't always get to interact with, and it's fun. In truth, despite how much they dislike gnomes, kobolds have quite a lot in common with them. They're both at the height of creative genius amongst the races of D&D, but as a result of their typical circumstances, their inventions tend to diverge a little bit. While gnomish societies are often out pursuing the very soul of artifice itself, kobold dens are often kit-bashing dangerous traps and weapons together to compensate for their relative lack of physical power. Their inventions don't contribute a lot to the world at large, but it does do a good job of turning a kobold den into a maze of horrors for any adventurers who want to fuck around and find out. The big reason for the Normandy level defensive layout of most kobold dens is the need to protect their children. Kobolds breed like rabbits, which is kind of a necessity when you also have around the same HP as a rabbit, you know? They aren't the most natural of warriors, so they have to make up the difference somehow. That starts with traps, and if necessary ends in hordes of kobolds rushing you to do what must be done, you know? That's the fate and duty of most of the den, but some possess a certain innate magical talent from their draconic ancestry. Kobold sorcerers can make for interesting traveling companions, or they can be the cherry on top of the kobold trap cake. Feeling good about how you found that narrow passage around the trap-ridden main den? Well, congrats, you've just lined your party up for the perfect lightning bolt. Cheers! Okay, I feel like there's one last thing that I need to address, and that's kobold mounts and lycanthropy. Check this out, right? Because kobolds ride dire weasels. I shit you not, dire weasels. These not-so-little guys are 10 feet long on average and weigh around 700 pounds. These are some big boys. And as it turns out, Garl Glittergold, that guy that killed Krodelmak, he's also a fan of dire weasels. Man, the kobolds and gnomes just have entirely too much in common with each other to be at odds like this. The weirdest part about all of this is that the kobolds' domestication of dire weasels has resulted in the rare occurrence of lycanthropy? Weaselthropy? Some kobolds can turn into weasels, and that's amazing. I don't know how that came out of the domestication process, but it's D&D. Things get weird really quickly. And that's kobolds, more or less. Side note, but as I was doing more research about the relationship between gnomes and kobolds, I realized that kobold, actually the German word for gnomes, leprechauns, goblins, pixies, all sorts of fantastical creatures like that. So, in a way, kobolds and gnomes aren't the same thing, but they have a shared history going back a lot farther than I originally thought. Kinda neat. We hope you guys enjoyed taking this first dive into the lore of D&D with us. Writing a script for the first time in my life was a little nerve-wracking, but I've been having a fun time doing the research and making the rewrites. If there's anything important that I left out, or you just want to start a conversation, leave a comment down below. Glad to have you on board. If you're interested in acquiring some Kobold merch or some other loot, Matcha actually has an Etsy shop where he sells stickers, pins, and a couple of hats, with more stuff on the way. Lovers of cats and Pokemon are especially welcome. Links in the description. Later, folks.